All right, boom, we are live currently, and
Yo.
we have Dustin D. Woody, aka Dustin Pools, on with us.
What's up, gangsters?
We're doing a little talking today about a post I made on Facebook about Texas Armwrestling League and the new class designations that we are going to be converting over to. So I'm going to give
Billy,
it
you're super crazy.
but it's not really that crazy.
No, it's not crazy.
But I think...
So you want to break down the classifications to kick it off?
All right, yeah. So, yeah, I'll go ahead and start. I mean, there's two people watching right now, but we'll get some more in, and then they can go back and watch this. So, just to preface, this is not a new thing. Like, I didn't create this new thing. Obviously, everybody knows that Corey Miller and Frank Callahan, AERS is their baby. They've been working on this for years. Corey has actually been running this model at Colorado and Wyoming State for going on 3 years now. Now, I realize that people outside of attending those tournaments have no clue that this format's been taking place. So to everybody else, this is brand new. So I'm not claiming this as my own thing. I didn't invent a new wheel or anything like that. I'm just simply, I believe, one of the first promoters to just fully roll out with this model besides Corey. So I was thinking the other day, and I was actually planning on pulling the trigger next year, starting it fresh for next year. And we got Frank Callahan in the house.
Yes, sir. How's everybody doing? I see Dustin's in here. How long have you been on, Billy?
Just a minute. Just started.
We just started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So going back to where it was, I was actually planning on rolling this out starting the season in 2026. Start fresh, start new, everything like that. And I just got to thinking. I was like, why not? We've got a pretty good gap between now and the Eastern. I hit Corey up and I was like, hey, what are you doing on that front as far as being able to access updated ELOs for brackets and stuff like that? Of course, Corey and Frank, they're working on it daily, hourly, So, they're like, well, he goes, I've got it. He's like, I've got it. So I'm like, cool, I'm going to roll with it. We're going to pull the trigger on it. So I was already kind of looking at the state breakdown on AERS and kind of came up with the idea, judging by the people that are in the areas and stuff like that. I kind of came up with a number. And of course, Frank being in tune to Texas, I kind of asked him to kind of look at it. He thought that they were pretty decent as far as that goes. So the categories will break down like this. You will have a tier 1 class, all right, that will be a 1530 plus. So any guys that are at ELO of 1530 plus will be in a tier 1 class. Your tier 2 will run from 1400 to 1529. That'll be your tier 2 class. And your tier 3 class will be a sub 1400. So a 1399 and below. And that will also include first timers, newcomers. I'm thinking probably more along the lines of 2 tournaments, maybe 3. I haven't decided on that one yet. So we'll have to look at it a little bit more, but that's how the classes will be broken down. So each one of these tiers will have the same standard weight classes that we have currently. So I know, I've combed through the Facebook comments and stuff like that, and really, it's what the pullers are going to see isn't going to change drastically. We're still going to just, and think of it in terms of if you were to apply amateur, and open. Your open class would be your tier 1. Your amateur class would be your tier 2. And then essentially what we're doing is we're adding a newcomer or novice class as a tier 3.
Yep. I think that's exactly how I understand it, Billy. And that's exactly how I've explained it to other people who don't understand it.
I don't know what there is to not understand. That makes perfect sense to me.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Well, I think it's just, I think verbiage and language, when you say class, some people think weight class, some people think amateur, open, pro, some people think, right.
The only thing I can understand is the weight class, like the way it was dropped. You could get confused about weight classes, sure.
Yes.
But I mean, yeah, it takes, like, the way that the air system works is, every weight class that you competed in, you have a number associated with you at this point, and that's your ELO. And an ELO is very simple, I think, for everybody to understand. And this should be a really cool opportunity for most, especially those guys that are amateur that want to pull up a class. Like, they're like, oh, I want to pull pro too. Cool. That's great, man. At least now you're not going to get poached. You're not going to get poached by a high 1500 guy pulling the novice class. And the novice guys could, if they want to test their water, they can.
But you said something there, Dustin, that I think some people don't know is that if you are a 1480 guy and you're normally pulling open, you can still pull that tier 1 by all means. If you want to pull, the air quotes good guys or whatever that might mean, you can always pull up just like you always have. It's only there to prevent people who are 15, 30 or whatever and above can't pull tier 2 and tier 3. But tier 3 and tier 2 guys can always pull up a tier. And I think that some people, that went over some people's head.
Assuming they don't have to.
No, they don't have to. No, but they can.
But they don't have to.
Right.
No, what I'm saying is they don't have to pull the class they're designated to either.
No.
Like, if you're someone who thinks they're really good, but you're a 1400 guy, you could just sign up for tier 1. Is that true, Billy?
Yes,
absolutely.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you're only relegated to your lowest number, right? So you're restricted to go on the low end, not the high end. You kind of broke up there.
And it would give those guys the opportunity to really bump up their score that think they're really high up there and pull guys much higher than them and maybe become something.
Sure. Now there's a lot of like dynamics that are going to work with this. And I think that, me and Frank were talking the other day. I think promoters using this format, hopefully more promoters come on board and we get more, because I think this will iron out the ELOs a lot quicker than, just random guys competing in different classes and stuff like that, like the way it is, because I don't know. It's just a lot of dynamics here because you can talk about.
Because you correct me if I'm wrong, Billy, but you plan on seeding the bracket within each tier, seeding the bracket, so you're pulling someone closest to your ELO.
Absolutely. So like that 1400 guy we were just talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's 1440. All right, he's already classified as tier 2. He wants to pull tier 1. Well, he's not going to go into a randomized bracket in tier 1 and have to pull the 1600 guy first out of the box. He will be at the very bottom of that bracket because that's where his ELO puts him at, right?
So I can't see how anybody would not just love a system like this.
Yeah. So you don't have to go if you're like, say we'll take D Woody for instance. Let's say you were in the 198 class, right? You got a guy that's 198, thinks he's really good, or whatever's doing really good. He wants to pull the tier 1 class, and he's only like a 1500, right? So he jumps into the tier 1 class. He will not see D Woody until later in the bracket. unless they're the
Oh,
only two, you know.
Yeah.
Now,
So it
here's
gives
the
them a fighting chance, kind of.
Yeah, here's the thing. You got guys like the Woody, you know, that when he comes to a tournament, he wants to pull the best guys, right? So this is really good for guys like Dustin that like a challenge, that want a challenge and stuff like that, because in the bracket now, he's not going to see that amateur guy testing his, you know, open category skills until possibly later in a bracket if that guy does good. He's going to see the guy next in line in ELO closest to him. You know, so the matches first out, in theory, should be the most difficult. Fresh for fresh in the bracket until you get past, like, say, what, match 2, Frank? You know, then it
Yeah,
starts.
then everyone's had 2 or 3 matches, you
Yes.
know, depending on how the bracket's going. But yeah, the whole goal there is, you know, if some out of stater, really good out of stater shows up and they want to pull against Dustin, and they are good, you know, you don't have to be like, oh yeah, I met this guy in the finals, but I had 3 real bad matches and he had Frank Callahan 3 times in a row, so he was super fresh. You know, it's set up like, oh no, this other really good guy, I get to pull him fresh for fresh, and you know, one of them goes B-side.
Exactly.
I think it's fine.
So
I think
there's really nothing bad
yeah.
about this, right? So we've got our three categories of breakdown. It doesn't really change much. We have all the same weight classes. People don't have to worry about that changing. You still come in, you weigh in for the weight class you want to pull. Your ELO will designate what tier, the lowest tier you can pull, essentially, and then you either enter that and pull. You can enter that and pull up to the next one, just like an amateur would enter amateur and then pull open class. You know, and then what this essentially does is so when you think a little bit deeper, right, you look at the Texas landscape. Texas has been growing and growing, and like guys like Dustin here can attest to that. You know, you guys are constantly getting new arm wrestlers into the mix between your group and Alejandro's group and Austin. They're constantly, you know, flowing into the sport. We're getting them here in San Antonio. I think a pivotal part of Texas Arm Wrestling League is trying to create a landscape to nurture that participation of all. Like I hate to say it, but like the number one goal of TAL is not to throw the tippy top of, you know, the pro tournaments out there. We like, you know, we love to have great competition, but it's not the goal like some of these tournaments. Some of these tournaments, these people only throw them to try to get the best people there, all the pros, and we need tournaments like that, you know. But as a league, as a true league, you know your model should be to try to create a landscape that works for everybody, even the guy coming into the sport.
But Billy, this is terrible if I only want to go against people worse than me. And I'm scared to pull guys at my level.
Look, that won't, unfortunately, this system won't change some people. Now, I think that, you know, I think that it was like one guy said, it was like my ELO, we have a good guy here in Texas, and I kind of put him a little bit on blast today. And he was like, well, now my ELO is so low because I don't compete ever that I can just enter the tier 2 and blast everybody. Well, you got to show up first. You know, you don't show up to, you don't pull. So at the end of the day, it doesn't change it. Either you're going to pull or you're not going to pull. But the good thing
about that guy, it's really simple. If you're that guy, you show up and pull the open and you gain 150 points in one day.
Well, that is true, right? You could do that. You and I both know that we might have, you know, people in the sport that are, sandbagging or trying to sandbag or trophy hunting or something like that. The good thing about this system is, you know, this particular person right here, they jump in. Let's say they jump into the tier 2 and they're really not a tier 2 puller, right? They really should be a lot higher. The next event, almost 100% they're not going to be tier 2 anymore.
Yeah, that's the beauty of this. That's what's magical.
Yes. Now, here's the good thing too, in a sense, is there's a lot of good stuff to this, right? Is that you have both lines in the sand, right? You got your 1400 line, you got your 1530 line, and you're going to have people right on either side of that. So you're going to have that guy that's like 1535 or something like that, right? Well, the great thing is that he's going to have to enter tier 1. He's not going to he's not going to be able to enter the tier 2 class, but he'll be at the bottom of the bracket as one of the lowest ELOs or close to the lowest, so he'll have an opportunity in that tier 1 open class bracket, to do well. And he might gain a lot of points, or he might go 0-2, lose a lot. Now next tournament, now he's in the tier 2 bracket near the top, right? So let's see what we got here. Jerry Duro, I've added many guys in East Texas. So yeah, just more to my point is that Texas is growing every day. So, we have a standard of competition that we've been running already, but what do we do to, I wouldn't say level the playing field in a sense, but create a more healthy atmosphere of competition for guys of all levels. And I just don't see how.
If in the sport we put the word competition first, and which in sports you're either putting the word participation or competition first. And if competition comes first, this is the ultimate way to allow those newly participating to compete and learn that they can be somebody and have goals to shoot for. For me, I mean, there's not many goals to shoot for in the local scene.
Sure.
But it does have, this option does exist, as all the guys who can really pull, like all the really good guys, slowly the data will pan itself out across the board, especially if this is picked up across the United States and utilized more often. The Robbie Russells of the world and whatnot, the cream will rise to the top. It's really, really a simple numerical plan that doesn't live in any form of objectiveness at all.
Yes.
It's that simple. You go compete, you move forward. The numbers don't lie. And like, if your number's low and you could tell me that your numbers are wrong, like Simon say, I would love to help Simon. I don't know how to say his last name. Baracoa, maybe?
Barachoa. Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah. I would love to help him get his numbers right. And, I'd love to see how you feel about your ELO when your matches are all in. And if they're messed up, I mean, I've dealt with Frank and Corey and said, hey, this was a mistake, and was able to show what they needed and fix it. And it's not like I'm calling them, telling them something. I'm showing proof of the event.
Here's the problem too, is I think
real quick, and I have to go. I'm sorry, Billy. It's for someone like Simon, or I saw a couple comments that said, "Oh, this won't work because certain things aren't accurate and this and that." Guys, it is just a rating range. If you are let's say you're a 16-20 guy, but for some reason you have one match missing or you have one extra match because sometimes people don't use the flash bracketing system, and if you're not using that, then you're basically leaving up to manual entering, and mistakes are very easily made at a keyboard. But what ends up happening is if your data is off by one or two matches, it doesn't change the tier you're freaking in. And at least for your case, Billy, I care because I want the data as accurate as possible.
Sure.
So still let me know. But for anyone who is saying that it's not going to work because of your idea of tiering, divisions based off of ratings not going to work because it's not accurate enough. That's just false. You guys are submitting all your data. You guys are using the flash bracketing system. So it's almost a perfect 1-to-1. I'm pretty sure 99% correct for all of Texas. And anyone who has one match missed or matched, guess what? It's not the difference between the tier you're in. And like you said, Billy, the second you pull, like if you're a tier 2 guy, but you really think you're a tier 1 guy, well, the second you win that tier 2 class, you're pulling with the tier 1 guys. And guess what? There's a chance you go 0-2, and now you're back in tier 2 again.
Yep.
But anyways, let me let you go, Billy. I'm going to watch your podcast, but I have to get to cooking some food.
All right, man.
Yo,
Thanks for coming on real quick.
and then to Frank's point, if you're a guy that says I'm supposed to be a tier 1 guy, what's really simple then? You just jump into tier 1 right off the bat and go whoop some people, and you're
Sure.
going to be the tier 1 guy even faster than everybody else because of the way the numbers work. Like, it's
Yes.
really infallible. All you got to do is compete.
Yeah. Yeah. See, and there's a lot of, like going back to, I think the problem is that even though like guys like Simon, they'll make the statement, it's not a ranking, it's a rating. That's correct. That's 100% correct.
That's correct.
But then they go on to talk about the issues with it that really apply to ranking, not rating, right? So Simon will say it's not a ranking, it's a rating, and then he wants to go in and say, well, I beat the 50 guys ahead of me in ELO. Well, yeah, that might be the case. You only pull once, maybe twice a year, and these guys are pulling 15, 20 times a year. So when rating is based on wins and losses and plus activity, you might have somebody that you can beat, every day and twice on Sunday, might have a slightly higher ELO than you because they're more active. Nobody's saying that they're better than you, because there's going to be some of those things in there. But then you're also going to have on that flip side, like take for you, for instance, at 198 here in Texas, you have a super high ELO, but at the same token, you are the top 198 guy at 198 currently, So like in some realms,
and when and you can go places and you can try it, right? Like I've gone
Sure.
and traveled and competed. And that's all a part of it. Getting out there and getting those matches in, it's where I hear people argue about this, is it's a lack of data for them. And I'm thinking, well, go get more data. What an exciting thing to go prove
Right.
yourself. If
Right.
this was a video game like Overwatch or League of Legends that a lot of people are going to identify with, and this was a diamond, platinum, and gold division, the reason you play those games is to move forward, to go against people and play with people at your level. And this
Right.
is that kind of bridge being built in the sport you love.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I actually can't figure out where anyone would have an issue with it at all. I don't understand.
So there's going to be, all right, so there's going to be a little bit, I think with each tournament, obviously it gets better and better, just like ELO airs across the board with each tournament, each match, the data gets better and better, right? So like we're going to roll it out at the Eastern. You're going to have some people that walk in with maybe a slightly higher ELO than what they should have, right? You're going to have that guy that's sitting in the tier 1 class with a slightly higher ELO, maybe because he did some extra super matches on the side. Maybe he's been active in the ranking super matches, beat a few people that he that they beat, and you gain some points. But in a tournament setting, that is probably going to be leveled out. You know what I mean? So there's going to be some class shakeups in the sense that you're going to have some guys in the tier 2 that might be a little low for tier 2, only because of their lack of activity. But we know within 1, maybe 2 tournaments, that's going to be remedied pretty quick, right? Like they're either going to gain a ton of points by beating a lot of guys in the tier 2 class, and therefore now they're going to be tier 1, or maybe maybe they're exactly where they need to be. The cool thing about it is that it doesn't restrict. There's no restriction. There's no more restriction in this than there was before, right? If you were an open guy and we knew you were an open guy, you couldn't pull amateur. If you were, we didn't have a novice class. So, if you were new, you were pulling amateur. If your first tournament, we got guys out here, and we have people from all types of demographics in the sport. We got guys that have been pulling for, 6, 7, 8, 9 years that are still in the amateur class. That's okay. Like I don't think that because time in the sport should relegate you to a particular class. Like it should be based on how you perform in that class.
Yeah,
If you're a
and you know
person
what? To your point right there, I might have argued with you about that before there was an ELO
Yes.
rating.
Yeah. No, I mean, many people have argued about that. Many people still hold that thing that if you've been in a sport longer than 2 years, regardless of what you've done, then you can't pull a novice or you can't pull amateur. You should pull open or, and it part of the reason in rolling this out because it's very difficult as a promoter. Like we can make decisions and stuff like that on who should be this and who should be that. But the criteria is really kind of subjective. And it's always going to be outside of this, right? So it's like, well, you won 3 amateur tournaments. Well, if you just left it at that, there'd be a lot of guys that had won tournaments that like they beat 2 novices, right? Or they, the data didn't support. Like once you break down the data of what their wins actually were, then you kind of had to look at it and go, yeah, probably not. Just because you won 3, those 3 tournaments weren't really significant enough in a way to justify moving you up to the open class.
Yeah, you had to have all kinds of stipulations, like if there weren't 5 people in your class. And now that brings us to another point, though. My biggest worry for rolling this out in Texas, as someone who over the past 3 years has been to quite a few of your events, I worry about the ability to, what's the word I'm looking for? To take away from the classes. And what I mean by that is you might lose some guys that would have pulled open. And now I show up and I've got 2 guys to pull.
So here's the thing.
Go ahead.
I see what you're saying there. I think with the 1530 rating, though, I don't think we're going to see much of that. And I think some of the guys, like we've talked about, that might be slightly lower that can pull tier 2. There's going to be a number of those guys that have been pulling open that are going to continue to pull open. Like I don't see, there's going to be some of them that are going to go, oh, look, I'm in tier 2 now. And absolutely pull where they lie. But I think for the most part, if I'm kind of looking at kind of the landscape of some of the guys that have been pulling for a while that have been pulling open classes, I think they're going to continue to pull open classes regardless of what their number is.
Have you thought about allowing people who pull one class, their designated class, to pull up one class for free?
I mean, that would have been no different than what we were doing before. So, there's always talk about, okay, discounts for pulling multiple classes. So, I mean, we didn't, if you were an amateur.
Yeah, or at a discount. A discount would be cool.
Yeah. If you were an amateur pulling into the open class, then you paid for your classes. It's, at the end of the day, that's additional entries that we have to run. That's more matches.
Yeah, and it's more opportunity to move forward for these guys. Like it's kind of worth jumping into.
So I mean, it's something to look at. I mean,
so my biggest worry though wasn't really the open class. That's only me speaking for myself. My biggest worry is it's my first tournament. I'm a novice guy, and I show up, and I'm like, oh my god, they finally have this cool system where I get to pull the new guys. And there's only one other person at my level. Does that person, do you think that you'll seed them upward? Is that a conversation per event?
I mean, look, I've been doing that for quite a while. And there are some promoters that just, if you don't have enough for a class, you get combined, period. I've always been of the, I'll give you the option. If you If you want to pull, I mean, if you want to pull today, you came to arm wrestle today, and unfortunately, we don't have a novice class for you or whatever, right? We don't have that sub 1400 class for you with enough people in it. So, it's just like the women's classes. It's no different. What point, what do? I either give you the option to pull, which I then put you in the tier 2 bracket, which your ELO will put you at the bottom of the bracket, right? So you'll have some sort of a fighting chance,
which is so cool.
Or you just don't pull, right? You know, there's no other option for me as a promoter to give you. That's the only options there are, you know. But you know, we have, if you're looking at the Texas stats, there are quite a few sub 1400 people, you know.
Have you perhaps looked at this and utilized a previous event and the attendees from that event and seen how it might shake out?
I didn't look at it per event. I looked at, when you go to AERS, you can break it down by state.
Yeah, and you went over the list. Yeah. That makes sense. I went
through each weight class, and I went to those numbers that I was thinking, and I'm like, all right, who's at that bubble? And I'm like, yeah, that guy's still pulling AMs. Oh yeah, that guy's been pulling open. You know, so Corey has been doing like Colorado State and stuff like that, and he does his numbers on a national average, which they're not far off from ours. So he does like I think like a 1450 maybe, 1550, and then 1550 plus.
Okay, so 20-point difference.
There's a 20-point difference, yeah, because he's looking at it nationally. I'm looking at it only by the majority of the demographic that's pulling at our tournaments.
Yep.
You know, so I don't want to factor outside of that, because even though we do get out of state people quite, you know, often, you know, I'm looking at the majority of what we have going on a regular basis. So
yeah.
Let's see.
I would love to hear any of the people who think it's a bad idea tell me, you know, come and argue, explain to me the bad side, so that I could either try and rationalize, or we could come up with something better together. Like, I'd love to hear some of those voices. Do you see any of that in the chat?
I mean, as far like nothing in this chat yet, but you know, as far as on the Facebook page, the only like comments that were kind of against it were due to the lack of information, I guess, in a sense. Like, they weren't like against it, but they didn't think ELO in general was going to work. So, you know, but there wasn't anybody that, at least I saw, that were in the public chats or anything like that, that knew exactly how it was going to go down, that were against it. I'm like you. I don't see how anybody could come up with a bad, if you absolutely know how it's going to break down.
Yeah.
And you have all the information, there's really nothing bad you can say about this.
And to Chip Flimper's point here about super matches are counted as long as they're sent to Corey or Frank, and they'll review it, and then they'll add those to the ELO score.
Yeah. So you know, Corey, there is, if you go to AERS.com, AERSarm.com, on the front page, there's a tab that says super matches. You can input that. They do ask that for these super matches to kind of be counted as valid, they need to be weighed for the weight class. You need a weigh in, and they should be properly refed, you know, not like anything super crazy. You know, but if you have super match results you want to get submitted, and if they ask if maybe you have video that they can go review, you can go on, submit that data. It'll ask you for the date, the other puller, how many times you won, how many times they won, what arm it was, what class it was. And, you know, that data gets fed into, you know, your ELO there. So they absolutely do take super matches. Let's see what Jose says. He goes, I'm just for the basic grip and rip, and have been pro open pulling for a while, Billy. 100%, you're right. Forget restrictions. Let's just pull. Your logic makes sense. Yeah. I mean, look, if you're an open puller and that's what you're used to doing, regardless of whatever outcome you're used to having in the open class, let her rip. You're not restricted to a tier 1 or anything like that. You can,
Yeah,
or a tier 2.
and it's gonna help you. Like they're gonna seed you against that guy you might have had some close matches with in the past, because you're probably
Absolutely.
close in ELO,
Yeah.
and you're not gonna get
So,
just dusted off right in the beginning.
yeah, I mean, like take me for instance. It's like, okay, well, let's say and everybody, and that's the same thing too. So nothing changes. So you can pull up a tier. You also can still pull up a weight class so you have, like you said earlier, if you pulled a weight class in any tournament, you're going to have an ELO for that weight class. So I have consistently pulled 242 and 243. I started off as a super, and then after I did that for a while, I came down to 242. I have 2 ELOs. I have my super ELO and I have my 242 ELO. So when I go into a tournament, I'm going to be a tier 1, considering that my ELO is over 1530, which I think it's barely over on the super side. So I'll be in a tier 1 at like 15. I don't know. One of my hands is like 1537 or something like that. Or something like that. Or maybe 1557. I don't know. But it's on the lower end. So I'll pull my 242 class at my right hand being like 1610, I think, or something like that. And if the top guy in that 242 class is, say, 1630, well, me and him will be fresh for fresh, straight out of the box in that 242 class bracket. And then it will trickle down from there. But then I go pull the 243 class on my right hand, and it's a 15, say 40. And the highest guy is a 1650. Well, there's going to be quite a gap between me and him until later in the bracket. So, I just don't. Well, we lost D Woody. Yeah, but moving forward, I just don't see how. I think this is going to create better landscape of competition for everybody. The guys that truly want competition are going to get that competition straight out of the box, fresh for fresh. I was just saying, like you, Dustin, like a lot of guys, like say there's this, this heavy hitter in your bracket, right? And you're kind of looking, you're like, I want to pull that guy. Well, you don't want to pull him like 6-7 matches in. You want to try to pull him first out.
Every single time. That's what I'm coming for.
Yeah. But in a randomized bracket, that guy might be like 6 or 7 brackets away from you, and you guys might not meet until 5, 6, 7 matches down the line in the bracket. Well, now by that time you're either gassed, he's had to work his up from the B side. Maybe you lost and you had to work your way up from the B side. Now you're in the finals, and you guys, it could kind of go either way. But
yeah, I mean, I know this all too well. It's definitely you come to try and you're scalping, right? You're looking for these guys to pull and not meeting them till the end. A big part of that, like if you catch him after he's beat up, it is not nearly as satisfying as smoking him right off the bat.
Absolutely.
So another funny thing, thinking about it, what is your plan for? Let's just pretend I haven't pulled. Well, you know what? I haven't pulled supers, I don't think. So
Yeah.
I don't have an ELO for supers. So if I want to enter supers, can I enter tier 1, tier 2? How would that work?
So that's one thing I need to talk to Corey about. So everybody that like when you first, everybody gets a default 1500 ELO. So this is kind of where the promoters still have flexibility within the system, right? So like a new guy never pulled a tournament comes up, or you never pulled a class comes up and says, "Hey, I want to try supers today." Okay. Well, you've never pulled that class, right? Or like the guy's he's not even in AERS. Well, it's going to default to 1500. So
But
at
the
that
guy
point,
that's not even in Aries, right? You would allow him to pull the novice class.
absolutely, yeah. Like, so that's where we have to know. Like, if we go to you, that's just like, for instance, Travis Harris. He's Cody's buddy. Got into the sport. I think it was. It's been probably last year. I think he pulled amateur nationals and I think the Eastern last year. He doesn't have an ELO right now. He's only pulled amateur, so there's really not an open ELO yet for him because he's only got a handful of matches. So he's going to be that 1500 guy that we're going to look at and go, okay, this is kind of where you're at. Now for you, I think we just have to, like, for guys like you, we kind of have to think. I think kind of got to look at these things and make some sort of an educated, deal. If I'm looking at the tier 2 class and it's looking pretty squishy on the 243 side, probably not the best to put you in that class,
Sure.
But if there are some guys that are tier 2 that look like some, then hey, the weight difference makes a difference,
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, it's like I had a guy the other day ask me if he could pull a higher weight class in amateur, even though he was technically now going to be pulling an open class. And I'm like, well, we typically don't allow that unless for instance, I've allowed Austin Jennings and like Chad Anthony as 154 guys to pull the amateur 243 class. Because
Sure. That sounds
there's literally a 100-pound difference there,
Yeah.
So, but I wouldn't go as far as like this guy was asking me, like he was a 220 and he wanted to pull the 242 AMs. I'm like, that's just way too close.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I mean, we'd have to look at it, but that's one thing too, is that, I think as promoters, we need to kind of try to know our people, right? Our regular demographic of people and what's coming in, and try to make our best decisions and stuff. But this will take a lot of that out of our hands because it just is what it is. You are now in the mix based on your performance.
I think it's a great move.
Let's see, Chimp Flipper. See, having bracketing and seeding is hugely exciting and actually getting challenging matches that are, yep, you're right. So that's another thing. That's the great thing about the seeding in the brackets is that, unless you have that anomaly where you have that guy that's kind of the ELO isn't quite right, your matches should be pretty competitive right out of the box.
Yeah, I think one of the best parts of the whole thing is the seeding of the tournament. I mean, man, that is so fun. I don't know that Corey does that. Is that what Corey does, or does he seed it the best against the best on the worst and the worst? He does it the way you're doing it? Okay.
No, it's exactly like this. He has a tier system that he breaks you down in, just like that. It's slightly higher than what we've set. And then within that bracket, you are seated in that bracket by your ELO. So
very cool.
Yeah. So I mean, he's been, like I said, this is not my thing. I don't claim it. I guess I do claim maybe one of the first promoters to kind of fully roll it out, other than Corey. But Corey's been doing it, and he's had some pretty good success in Colorado and Wyoming, and he's been doing it enough time to get feedback from the pullers that typically attend those tournaments and stuff. So, it's, if you have anything negative about it, it means you don't fully understand it.
Yeah, it has to be a lack of understanding.
Sure. Without a doubt. But yeah, so on top of that, though, I for some reason I had this weird concern about me having to buy more medals since we're having a class, which I don't understand why somebody would be concerned about that. But So like what Corey has done is he charges for the novice or sub 1400 class, he charges a slightly lower entry fee, but there's no guarantee of awards for those that class. I'm going to give some sort of awards for those classes. I'm kind of leaning towards a slightly lower entry fee for them, and but they won't get what the tier 1 and tier 2 get.
Have you thought about, and I'm going to be real crazy now, have you thought about all of the entries in the highest tier class going to, instead of a medal, a payout to that class?
I mean, it depends on what happens with our model, Dustin. Like, here's the thing. If I continue to try to push for payouts at Texas State, there's not going to be any discounts. There's not going to be any multiple classes discounts. There's not going to be any payouts. Because, like, look, 10 to 12 grand for Texas State is a hard build to push forwards, you know, by the end of the year.
Of course.
Now, look, I've said it once before, you know, the community has to decide what they want, right? Right now, we're kind of, and it's not just Texas, it's everywhere. We're dealing with a huge oversaturation of tournaments with not a big population to fill those tournaments. Like I said, at the end of the day, it makes no difference to me. I just kind of need to know where to go. I can't continue to go down this road of trying to hit payouts for Texas State and all this other kind of stuff while people want more tournaments and smaller tournaments. Like, unfortunately, the reality is that the way our model runs, it relies on people coming to our tournaments. If that drops, that makes that goal harder to hit. And thus, I just kind of need to know where to go. I can point either way. We can totally get rid of Texas State payouts, and we can do some other cool stuff for the regionals, because at the end of the day, there's no goal to hit by the end of the year.
Yeah.
You know, we'll still have a Texas State. That'll never go away. We'll still have kick-ass awards or whatever like that. Maybe we'll do something like Texas State awards have been just kind of like your normal type things, because there's $500 there. But to me, that's not normal. That's super cool. That's nuts. I'm showing up for all the money. But I can't do both. Like, I would love for attendance to stay good and sponsorships to be fantastic. But if there's going to be more and more tournaments flying around and less turnout, and that's less appeal for people, for sponsors, then, you know, something's got to give. I got to go somewhere.
Yeah, of course.
Now, with that, here's the thing. The kind of the flip side of that is that maybe that's an option of going to a percentage of payouts for open class at regionals. If I don't have that, like, if our tournaments need to make X each one in order to hit the Texas State goal, well, I can take that X and dump a big portion of it into that regional, because I don't have that bill at the end of the year anymore. So whether that's $1,000 or, you know, whatever, $2,000, if it's on a bigger tournament, whatever that is, we can do that. I just need to know where to go. Like, Texas needs to understand that I need to know where to go. If it's a bunch of smaller tournaments is what we want, hey, I'm not hating on anybody. Look, we have other promotions running tournaments, planning to run more tournaments. That's fine. If that in turn drops our attendance because guys aren't traveling out and stuff like that, which I get, you know, people don't want to travel, but there's consequences to these things, and it's not a negative consequence. It's just like, look, we can't if I can't keep continuing to get more and more people out to our events, that's less and less we can do. So
yeah, that makes total sense to me. I get it for sure.
Yeah. It's an either or, unfortunately. Now, look, if something comes along and it's great and we can do both, hey, you know, I'm all for it. this is what I'm here for. You know, I don't spend all this time doing all this stuff just for me.
Yeah,
You know?
of course.
Like, because I don't. The benefit that I get is just trying to provide something for the state of Texas. I get no personal benefit out of any of this. Like, that is my personal benefit. So, the man himself.
What's up, man?
Oh, just chilling.
Just
Talking
chilling.
a little bit about what we're gonna do here. So I think we laid it out pretty good. I mean, hopefully people are watching this. We got about 18 people watching.
Yeah,
Hopefully
I mean,
some of those-
Corey can speak to, how successful that's been in terms of seeding something like Colorado State, and how the local crews react to it on his end. What has your feedback been like, Corey?
Well, I have ran 3 years worth of it now. I've done both Wyoming State, Colorado State, South Dakota State, and the Jumpers Inc. Cup, all in a seeding format. And my 2 events that I run also do a tier-based division. I still use the words just because it's easier for people to understand.
Yeah.
But I use a tier-based system. And yes, the first year was a little rocky. Don't get me wrong. Everyone was freaking out. But
I agree with you, Jose. I agree with that statement.
Yeah, for the next couple of years, though, it got more and more competitive. Each class got more closer. The pros were seated properly, and they were going against the proper people more often, and it just made for an overall better competitive tournament. Regardless of the event, it doesn't matter. Wyoming, Colorado, doesn't matter.
Sure.
But overall, with Colorado, I've been able to do 3 tiers. In Wyoming this year, we're doing 3 tiers. Normally do 2. And then even at Colorado one year, I did a 2-tier women's version, and I think that also went over well. But yes, the problem is that most people don't understand AERS. That's plain and simple. They don't understand it. They don't believe that they're that ability. But then once you start putting out, the facts of you're going to pull against these type of people who are in your range, and you're going to be placed in a way that you won't just go 0-2 just because of bad randomization and everything like that. It makes it makes the tournament more, I'd say, what's the word? Like more willingness to actually compete. Like some people have been saying, well, that just makes it so I don't want to show up because I know it's going to be my class or whatever. It's like, no, all I'm doing really is just giving justification for what you actually are. If you're going to go amateur, it's because you are that person type thing.
Yeah. Well, to that point real quick, unfortunately, I think as promoters, like those people that say that, well, I know who's going to show up to my tournament and, this and that. Look, we can't do, like, if we just worry about that, then, it's a crapshoot, right? We have to worry about the people that are actually showing up to our tournaments. So if you don't want to pull up to a tournament because you're worried about who's going to be in your class and it might not be an easy win for you or whatever, then there's nothing we can do as promoters for you.
No, you can't. And all you can do is like what you're trying to do is make it so that a middle level guy or a low level guy is more competitive. For an example, there is a guy that's in Colorado. I won't use names or anything because I don't like to do that. But there's a guy, I can share a couple of guys that are low level 1,400 people who have been arm wrestling for quite some time.
Sure.
And that is the novice area, and they're competing against the new timers and all that kind of stuff. And that to me is fine. That guy he's been pulling for 10 years and still no offense, not great at arm wrestling, but he's now pulling against people he should be pulling against, and
Yeah.
eventually he will merge to where he gets out of there. He puts himself into the amateur level, whatever, and then maybe he loses some matches, drops back down, and that's what's supposed to happen. You're supposed to be fluid and in your level of progression through the sport. Like it takes a while to get to a 1700 or a 1600 to be a pro or whatever.
Yeah, or the right steps, right? You have to go hunt for the guys that are better than you or have higher,
And
so
and the biggest thing is when you start putting people that are matched up closer to each other against each other, they actually move faster because they are more likely to be 50-50 at that point. So that the likelihood of someone moving faster, progressing faster is better for them. Rather than I'm an amateur guy playing against a pro guy and the odds of me winning that match are very low and I'll lose barely anything, but that guy will gain barely anything. Now you have everyone's basically 50-50 the whole way and they actually progress quicker. So it is better in the all around long run for this to happen.
Yeah.
I love it.
To the comment here, Bronco Billy, as a puller, I like the idea of being able to be matched up against tougher opponents myself. So this is perfect for that because one, if you stay and let's say you're a tier 2 guy, you stay in that's what you want to pull. You're going to be matched up against guys of like ELO in the bracket first. So you're in theory, if it's, it works out exactly the way it's supposed to, your toughest matches should be match 1 and 2 of the bracket. If you're a guy that really likes a challenge, nothing changes for you. You pull tier 1. If you're a 1500 guy that loves a challenge and you want to pull the open, class or pro class, you pull tier 1. The only difference is now is that you have the ability to be a little bit more competitive in that bracket now because you're going to start off at the low end of that bracket and work your way up, to guys of higher ELO.
Yeah.
So it really, there's no pitfall to this.
No.
Anywhere.
No. It's literally, when all is said and done, it comes down to is you are just now giving an actual real mathematical justification for what you actually are as a competitor in the sport. That's it.
I get to pull against the other semi-amateurs.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it. I don't care what name you call it, but
this is the thing about you, Todd, right? So like you're kind of in that boat, right? You're on the upper end of that 1400 range and stuff like that. 100%. We need all pullers of all demographics. I've never subscribed to that. Like you can be an amateur puller and have pulled for 20 years. That's a reality.
Mm-hmm.
But the cool thing about this is that now if you say, hey, look, I would rather not pull the novice class or what we're considering the novice class, the sub 1400, I still want to pull the tier 2 and try to be competitive. Well, you're going to be at the bottom of that tier 2. Now, just like I was saying with the other one. So you are going to get the opportunity to be more competitive rather than going against the guy that's going to, first out on a random bracket that's going to blow you out because he's a 1529,
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I love it. I love how it's being seeded and everything like that. So your closest competitor is your first match. I mean, it just, once people finally experience it, I think they'll understand, versus just looking at something on paper and trying to say, I don't think it's a good idea. Or go out and experience it first and then make your decision.
Well, but that's the thing is like, I think like we were talking about now, I don't even think you have to experience. I think if you just like say, listen to this podcast or whatever like that and understand really nothing changes for a lot of people, and look, I'll be honest with you. We talked about it before we came live. Like my flyer, no more amateur, no more open, only ELO. While there's a ton of truth to that statement, it was designed to get people's attention because in essence, this is what I told Bob Brown, right? He's like, well, I think it's confusing when you don't say, and it is, I totally grant that. But here's the thing. Sometimes, like I told him, is exactly what I told him. I said, sometimes you have to destroy something to rebuild it. And 2 years from now, what I'd like to see, because I consider this to be the way forward, is when somebody asks you, hey, what type of puller you are? Well, I'm a 17-15 puller. And people will just know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I think that's probably what, at the end of the day, like Corey and them's like light at the end of the tunnel, right? Is, you know, hey, I'm not I'm a 15-50 guy. And then people will just know exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Of course they will. There's no question. That's why this is fantastic, because rating you can use in a conversation. Now there's room for ranking still, obviously. But boy,
Sure.
when there's a good rating system that's been being built for years and it's on a single number for everybody across the board, it becomes real easy to put some really cool matches together and see where people are at.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I mean, that's what Flashpin uses. You know, you guys used AERS to kind of look at some different matchups and stuff like
Big
that.
time, big time.
Yep. Let's see. Red says if someone pulls a novice class and you want to do the lower entry price, and yeah. So unfortunately, look, this is the way it is. You're in a competition. So if you're a novice and you want to pull novice and the tier 2, you're going to pay the entry fee for both those. It's no different than what we've had before. If you wanted to pull amateur and open and multiple weight classes and all that kind of stuff, you paid for what you pulled. You know.
And you probably already covered it, but a lot of everyone starts out at a 1500, correct?
Yeah. So I do have some questions for Corey that I'm going to kind of work through on the back end, but to make sure that. But like everybody starts off at a 1500. So if a guy walks in, he's only pulled one tournament, he's really not going to have an ELO yet. You know.
Right.
I'm sure there's an ELO on the back end, but like as far as what we can see, like there's nothing that we can see. But when we know that he's only a one tournament guy, we already know that he's a tier 3 guy.
Yeah.
You know.
Did you already let the cat out of the bag about the system?
I don't know. Remind me. I guess I didn't.
Of the bracket system that I'm working on? The seeded one? I'm assuming not.
I mean, they know that the brackets are going to be seeded.
Yeah, but you didn't tell them about the new version one.
No, but if you want to elaborate a bit on that, you're more than welcome to.
Okay. So Billy has, well, I've been running my events and I've been manually putting it in there, and it's been automatically seeding them based on the values. Not like Super 64 where it's 1 versus 2, 3, 4 all the way down, but more like basketball does where it's 1 versus 16, 2 versus 15, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I have a version that I am working on right now that is, essentially ready, but there's a couple of tweaks I really want to do, and Billy kind of just touched on it. But the system basically auto-populates your value into the bracket automatically when you're registered. So it'll look up Corey Miller and say he's a 1700 for this class, but in this class he's a 1800 or he's a whatever. And then I'm working on the ability to flag that per the category that you're putting him into, like tier 1, 2, 3, whatever. You would put those values in beforehand and it will flag you. So for an example, if Billy had a 1500 guy who's brand new, it would give him 1500, but flag him saying, hey, just so you know, you're putting him into 1, you're putting him into 2, you're putting him into 3, whatever. But that system is near completion right now, and I'm just kind of working the tweaks on it. But it will basically make the seeding a cakewalk. You'll enter the name like you normally do. It will auto-populate the value for you, and it'll seed the brackets and everything. You won't have to do anything about it. It'll just, boom, done. And it'll make things so much smoother and easier. And Billy won't have to search for people's values or any of that kind of stuff, because that's basically what I'm doing right now. Is I have to search you up and look you up and do this and that.
Yeah.
So that all goes away with this new version.
Corey, are we the first promotion to fully roll this out besides excluding you?
So
I'm not talking about the seating, but I'm talking about like the tiers and everything from like turnkey. Is anybody else in North America doing this right now, or I guess the United
there
States?
was. I know Tim Lewis tried doing seating a couple of times at different events when
Yeah.
he was running the brackets. I don't think he did tiers, but I know he did seating.
Well, you've had the seating option for quite a while now.
Yeah,
Like
everyone had it. They just didn't realize it.
Yeah, or they just didn't want to take the time to manually have guys try to bring in their numbers, and half the people didn't know what AERS was, and
Yeah, exactly.
stuff like that. You almost needed somebody there looking it up for you as you're entering it in.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is why
you would technically be the first one to move into it with me.
Yeah.
I think that's perfect for seeing how many pullers we have in Texas.
No, I mean we have a pretty good. I mean, we have a pretty good test pool.
Yeah.
We have we throw a number of events consistently, and so I think it's a perfect place to roll it out. And our population of pullers is growing consistently. So
yeah,
we have a lot of teams that are just growing, like San Antonio's. I mean, we're a 4 to 5 table practice pretty much every Friday now. Austin's getting some new people in. Alejandro's group's really big. The Arsenal's group's pretty big. The guys like Lubbock and Amarillo, they're growing, I think, at a pretty good rate considering where they're at in the state. They're not in a real high population area, but they're still growing. They're getting new people on a pretty consistent basis.
Well, yeah, and it's not even like Wyoming doesn't have a lot of pullers. Colorado has a bunch, but Wyoming doesn't have a bunch of pullers. We get a lot of people that come in to Wyoming to pull and whatnot. But the seating thing allows those extra people that we don't see all the time to actually come into the bracket properly and not just be like, oh, well, in California, I'm an amateur, but then he comes to Wyoming and he's not an amateur. He's a pro or whatever. All that kind of crap goes out the window. Like now it's, nope, you are a 15er. I'm sorry, you don't qualify for that or whatever.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, I think I pretty much laid it out, right? We're gonna roll this out at the Eastern. It'll be our first event. Like I said, the novice classes. I know Corey, in the past with your tier 3, your lowest tier group, you've done a slightly lower entry fee, but no guarantee of awards, right?
Yeah. So Colorado State, last 2 years. Except for this year, I'm changing because I lost my sponsor money.
Sure.
I have done tier 1 and 2 have cash and prizes or awards or whatever, but tier 3 was your basic lowest level class, super cheap, no prizes, no nothing, and they all know, hey, I'm just getting really cheap entry fees and I'm just getting the arm wrestle, so they don't care.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So thankfully enough, I mean, I guess in a sense that thankfully I've got medals from day one. So what I'm going to do is repurpose those medals into the novice class. I've got enough Texas State medals from the past years to support like two Texas States and probably like 5 tournaments worth. And then I'll continue to do stuff like maybe we'll do some certificates at some point or some other types of awards and stuff like that for that class. So they'll get something at the end of the day. And then we'll do our standard stuff like we typically do for, our classes right now. We'll continue to roll with that.
I think an award that would be neat to implement would be at a tournament is highest additional points added to your ELO score.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, that one has to be done afterwards though. That's the only
Yeah.
So we did that at the Southern, and we had Joe Bermudez, the young guy from Corpus. He was one of the highest. Then we had two guys actually from the San Antonio team, Rhett and Miles, were the other two winners. They had the highest ELO gain during that tournament. And I did some awards that I made and stuff like that. So it was really cool to do stuff like that. But yeah, like those types of things. I mean, we could totally do that kind of stuff. And like I was talking to D Woody, about where do we go with, what does the community want in a sense? If we abandon Texas State payouts and then we expand in other areas, we put more into regionals. So like, Todd, you guys do exceptionally well up in like say Lubbock with sponsorship and stuff like that. Well, now instead of that sponsorship, helping pay the bills for the tournament and stuff like that, and then pushing forward, if Texas State doesn't, we don't need any of that stuff for Texas State anymore, then it can be dumped right back into the, a large portion of it could be dumped right back into the regional.
Yeah, and that'll actually bring more people in saying, "Oh, there's not going to be as many people. I'm going to try to sneak up there and win it." Well, guess how many other people are going to have that mindset, and then you have a bigger tournament.
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, I got to figure out where the community wants to go with these things, because we can do either or. And at the end of the day, I love to provide the fact that our state championship pays out the way it does, but if that's not important to a lot of people, and like I said, more tournaments is more important, less turnout at tournaments and stuff like that. If they want a tournament every weekend of the of the month, and 2 hours apart from each other, if that's what they want, then hey, let's whatever, we'll roll with it. But I got to change the model. I can't continue to try to strive for hitting the same goals if the turnout and everything like that is not going to be the same or better. Let's see, let's look at a couple different comments here. What do we got? Here's one. It says, will the AERS website update to show rating for those who have only pulled amateur?
Yeah, so for the amateur people, it is on the classes page.
Yeah.
Because that's when it merges everything together. The classes page actually shows you that amateur level. Eventually, we want to take that away, because there is currently right now an amateur modifier that because everyone who's an amateur can also pull pro and everything else under the sun. So eventually, we want to take that away to where it's just an open rating, like it's just you, kind of thing. And this will fix that, right?
Yeah.
Because every single one of these classes that you do is just going to go in as open, and amateur doesn't apply anymore. It's just open, whatever. And that's how it'll work. So,
yeah. So this will help us basically provide everybody with an actual ELO.
Yeah.
See, yeah, I think there was a comment afterward. He goes, or is there let's see. Yeah. Or is there one on the classes page? Yeah. So there should be one on the classes page where it shows. And see, and that might be a little issue too, because if you try to break it down by state, there might be some people that haven't updated their states yet.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to scroll through the whole list of, supers to try to find, your name or whatever, instead of breaking it down by state to bust it down a little bit.
Well, so yeah, and that's kind of like what I was getting at is the eventually we are going to make it to where you wouldn't have to worry about that, because every tier is open. It would just go into the system as open, and after a couple of matches with open, that amateur value goes away. You're back to a normal number, and it is what it is. So
sure, yeah. So we get
so my score is going to drop more.
No, your actually value would
increase. Gosh.
Yeah. So right now, if all you've ever pulled is amateur, you've never pulled anything else, and you're only pulling amateur, you actually get a modifier to decrease your value until you are getting to a certain amount of open matches, and then that modifier goes away, and you're back to normal.
Yeah.
that will disappear in a matter of probably 2 or 3 times of doing this, and there will never be in person with the amateur again.
See, so like we run it on the Eastern, we run it on at Texas State, then we'll have to get through a couple tournaments there at the beginning of next year just to try to get most people once we go out to El Paso and then we come back. But yeah, that's good. I like it. Yeah, but I mean, hopefully people are watching and they relay this information to people that may have had the wrong, they misunderstood what was going on or whatever like that. And just know that, I know I saw some screenshots of some conversations where guys were like, well, there's no point of going to tournaments anymore. And it's like, it doesn't change anything that you do. Like if you want the competition, it only ensures that you're going to be more
You're going to get actual competition.
Yeah. So nothing changes on the weight classes. People misunderstood that, and the fact that they thought that we were going to combine all the weight classes, that it was just going to be a tier of ELO from top to bottom. That's not the case.
Yeah.
Everything else will still, stay the same.
Yeah. There's no reason to let good get in the way of better.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's only gonna make events better. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll continue to answer questions too. But anything else y'all want to talk about? What's the latest drama in arm wrestling? What's the latest gossip?
You know me, I always got something, but
but can you talk about it?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that are on my bucket list right now, but
yeah, I don't know. I mean, everybody's kind of like trying to capitalize on the East versus West stuff, and I don't know. I'm kind of the deal of I think these big dogs have to settle it amongst themselves. I don't know if all these people trying to comment and give their 2 cents and stuff like that, or show support here and there, and I'm like, let these guys work it out. You
mean there's trouble in the eastern side of the East versus West? Never.
Well, I think I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but
right.
It's there's a combination of a lot of different things going on there. So, but they need to work it out, and they will. They'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about we got what, Colorado State coming up, right, Corey?
Wyoming State.
Oh, Wyoming first.
Wyoming first. 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yep.
I have
Nice.
Wyoming State, which is a 3-tier system, with ranges and all that. We're doing 2 super matches. We have Bob Brown pulling AJ Henson, right-handed, and then we also have Garrett Reese pulling Nolan Grooms out of Missouri, left-handed. So those matches should be really good. AJ feels super strong now that he's healed up from his torn biceps. So it's gonna be an interesting one, and new venue this year because my last year's venue booked on top of me. So,
oh no,
but it's all
yeah.
right.
Nick had to have wrist surgery, I believe, on his left hand. So that left hand is going to be out of commission for a while. But
man,
wish you the best, buddy.
And then so then that's on the 12th. And then after that, we have Colorado State, which is August 23rd.
23rd
in Denver.
Now, I'm Corey. I'm a little upset that you're so close to my event here in Texas. I can't believe you would stack close to me like that. But I'm joking, obviously.
You mean East versus West the week before?
No. Yeah. So I guess I guess, did you get my message yesterday about the registration?
That they reopened it?
Yeah.
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 So.
Yeah, it's most unfortunate.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
There's not much I can really do about what they just are going to do, I guess. But
Yeah.
you know, my venue is super awesome. It's right downtown Denver. There's restaurants everywhere and 30 minutes from the airport, so a lot easier to get to than Loveland.
The mysterious Denver airport.
Yeah, it's about 30 minutes from the airport. From my venue. We have tons of super matches and a round robin now, and guys coming out from Michigan and all over and Georgia.
Oh
and
wow!
So I mean, statistically speaking, Colorado State has been one of the top 5 largest events in the country for the last 2 or 3 years. So it just kind of sucks that East vs West is going to be literally the Friday before Colorado State,
Oh,
a week before.
Well, this kind of like speaks to what I'm talking about here in a more on a larger scale, you know, of the abundance of tournaments, and that, you know, it's going to get much more difficult for guys like Corey or myself that, you know, like Texas State, or, you know, Corey providing, you know, the stuff that he typically provides because he gets the turnout that he usually gets, when more and more tournaments are popping up every day. And so it's like it's not just Texas, it's like it's across the board. Like we don't have enough pullers for all these tournaments.
No,
We don't.
The active puller count per year is around 3,000 to 3,500 pullers per year.
Yeah.
And if you think about, there's roughly, well, we put in almost 200 plus events a year, and now with all these little tiny super match events too that people are doing.
Yeah.
That's the part that just blows my mind.
Well, super matches is it seems to be the highlight, even for like the novice to amateur guy. They are super matching their teammates, and they're super matching their, you know, their buddies, and like there was a guy that came to the Southern. I'm like, hey, you pulling today? Oh no. I'm like, why not? Oh well, you know, I don't think I'm ready. But I was like, I watch you pull super matches at your practice all the time. Like, what do you mean you're not ready?
Yeah.
Like, oh well, you know, and I'm like, I don't get it.
Did I tell you how many matches we consumed from this point, well, a couple months ago, till like one full year of super matches?
No, you didn't tell me.
Just randomly guess how many super matches we have consumed in a year's time frame.
600.
Nah, I was gonna say over 1,000.
3,500. 3,500 matches were straight just super matches in 1 year.
That's a lot.
That's like,
That's a
if
lot.
you think about the average tournament only has like 200 or 300 matches alone.
Yeah.
You know, small tournaments have less than 100.
Yes.
So
yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel in a way, I don't know, I wouldn't say responsible, because I think this is just the trend of, I think this is the kickback of the EVWs and the knuckles ups and stuff like that, is that they create these prestigious stages and they make super matching appealing and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, super matches have their place, obviously. You know, they have their place with, you know, the Texas State rankings and stuff like that. But it seems that it's almost been glorified in a sense that super matching your buddy at a practice and taking a win there is more prestigious and exciting than pulling a tournament and fighting your way through a bracket. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
well,
You got to head off. Thanks, guys.
I think
later, man.
The last I checked, the amount of super matches that was just in this year alone is like double to triple of what it was the year before.
I believe
so it's only getting worse. Like every other weekend or every weekend, there's, you know, people submitting super matches now. It's out of control. I bet you if I pull it up right now, there's probably a crap ton of people waiting to have their matches imported.
Right. Which we did touch on that. Somebody had asked about the input of super matches and stuff. So I told them where to go.
Oh,
Now, if you would kind of give me what y'all are looking for, because you guys just don't want like you. There's a little bit of an expectation, right?
yeah, I mean, as far as importing goes, the new way is just going to the website, and on the website there's a link right in the homepage for entering your own super matches. And I mean, obviously we would prefer you to do it at a tournament. That's pretty obvious. We want it refed, and we want it weighed. That's the biggest thing, is weighed and refed. If it's not weighed and refed, it's hard to like justify whether that's even real or not. If it's in your backyard at some barnyard brawl, whatever, and it's just two guys going to town, like I don't really care about that stuff. That's you messing around. But so like Utah's been just doing this ranking thing where they're pulling a lot of these super matches, and that's fine. You know, they're like doing it every weekend pretty much, and pulling super matches every weekend.
Yeah. For
positionings, and you know that's fine as long as they weigh them and the referee properly and everything else. You know.
Yeah.
Go to town.
But, yeah. That's kind of the thing too. Like I was thinking about, like with this the new system in the CD, like you're gonna have guys that are floating around doing a ton of super matches, with in essence inflated ELOs.
Yeah, and I've brought that up a couple of times with the Utah guys, and you know, Scott Evans is a huge promoter of AERS. He loves it.
He loves it, yeah.
And he is unfortunately becoming one of those circumstances where he pulls just a little too much in his area, and so that is affecting him good in a way.
Well, he's watching. That's what he's trying to do. He's actively working to increase his ELO.
Right.
But like, correct me if I'm wrong. The flip side of this is now, if that is his goal, is to see his ELO be tippy top.
Yeah.
He's really got to be careful where he goes as far as the tournament goes, because if he loses to a few guys that in a tournament that are substantially lower, he's gonna lose a ton of points.
Yeah, he's gonna drop like a rock. Which, in theory, I mean, that is perfectly fine. That's supposed to happen.
Sure.
Because he was probably a little too high because of pulling the matches around him. But what that does is level him back down to where he belongs. And that's because AERS is more about a nation. It's not more about your state. But it is for the nation, and he is this level type thing.
The only kickback that I worry about that is that and I'm not saying this particularly about him, but since I'll use his situation as the example, is that you'll have a guy like him boosting his ELO by 10 points here, 10 points there with a super match every weekend in his club. Now he's got this hugely inflated ELO. Now, if that is his end goal, is just to see his number high, like, he's going to be picking tournaments that, you know, he probably doesn't stand to lose in because he wants to.
Yes and no. I mean, the problem is if you're too high, like, for an example, myself, I can't go basically anywhere. If I go anywhere and pull anyone and lose to anyone, I will lose points.
But that's what I'm saying, is that he's going. If you have a guy that is only looking at the number, not necessarily for it to be true, just to be inflated to say I'm a 16 or 1700 plus, you know, you have to know that if you can't just go to any tournament now, because you need to try. Only goal is to have a high number. You have to be very picky and choosy about where you go, because if you lose,
or you have to go to places knowing that the guys that you need to pull against are there.
Well, but that's not. I guess what I'm saying is that is not going to be that's not going to be the motivation. What I'm saying, I'm thinking about it in like the flip side, is that you're not seeking for people that are necessarily better than you. You're hunting the score.
And so it goes in two different ways, right? It goes in the fact of, yes, you're hunting for a score, But at a certain point in time, you have to go after people extremely higher or just a little bit better than you to make that score go up. Like when you're in
Yeah.
1800 and you're pulling 1500 guys, you're not moving anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
it'll take you forever to get anywhere up the line.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah,
eventually what's going to happen to Scott and those guys and like myself. Like I can't just go pull 1500 guys. I'm not going to
Sure.
move anywhere. If I'm really trying to get to a 2000 or whatever, I can't pull those people. I have to go find the better people, and
Yeah,
that's the only
absolutely.
way. And so,
But
yes,
but I
they
guess
could
that's
do
what
it
I'm getting at. I
like
guess
an
what
ELO
I'm
farm, I guess. But
I guess that's what I'm. He's not necessarily increasing his score, like you would say. A bulk of his score is increased by super matches at his local club, right?
yeah, recently, yes,
You know, so it's 10 points here, 20 points there, whatever.
yeah,
I guess what I'm looking at. I guess what I'm trying to say is that he wants to go pull a tournament, but he wouldn't want to stand to lose points like that. So maybe he seeks out tournaments that he knows are easy. Now he knows he's not going to gain a lot of points from them, but he knows he's not going to lose any.
well, yeah, but then again, there's always that chance that you screw
Sure.
up or whatever else, and
Yeah, you never know who's going to show up anywhere. Yeah, I mean you know, so
yeah, and there's people that have tried that theory. Like I always bring it back to Tim Lewis. He is constantly pulling a super match every other freaking weekend. It seems like, and
yeah,
that guy he's high up there because he wins a
Yeah.
lot, but when he loses, he loses a lot of points. And even if he comes out successful as like he won the super match like 3-1 or whatever, that one loss to a bad arm wrestler ruins him.
But Tim also, I mean, like he's pulling a ton of super matches, but he's pulling tournaments as well. Like he's entering
Right.
the tournaments.
Right.
Like so he's not shying away from the competition in a sense. Like he's pulling a ton of super matches, but he's also pulling the tournaments where anybody's there.
Yeah.
Like if I was just thinking in the aspect of somebody only looking at a I don't want to say malicious way, but a very strategic, easy way to increase ELO. Like I could go around super matching a bunch of guys here in Texas to increase my ELO by 5 or 10 points each time.
Yeah.
And they're going to be people I know I'm going to beat, but I'm doing it just to,
That's
increase
the
my
longest road possible.
absolutely. But
It's like this.
I get it. No, truly,
There's
But-
actually people that are trying to do that, but then again, in the long run, they end up eventually going to some tournament. They lose one match, and everything they worked for on all those matches is gone in an instant.
yes.
Because you could like you said, you could go farm 2 points, 3 points here and there, beat all
Yeah.
these chumps for a while, and just slowly do this. Go to one tournament, lose to one person that you're supposed to lose to, and lose
Dude.
everything in one shot.
20-something points, yeah.
Yeah, you'll just be gone.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. All in all, I think it's a great thing. I think people are going to like it. Just a little bit of clarification because I am getting a message from somebody about this, but so the way it applied to Texas State is basically the same way it applies now. So tier 1 this year will be the only tier that gets the payouts. So just like anything else, so there's no confusion there. With all the confusion that it seems like people have had. So tier 1 is what is considered the open or pro class will get payouts. Tier 2 will be the amateur class. And then we'll get what they typically get. Because somebody had just asked, this person's ranked pretty high, 243, but now they don't have much of an ELO in 240, 220 or 242. What he's asking is basically if he comes to Texas State, would he pull the tier 2? And that would be where your ELO would put you. But, if you're coming to Texas State and you're that good of an puller, you're not pulling tier 2. You're pulling tier 1. you know, and like you're trying to go for the money.
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
And then,
me,
and really, it should give your guys is like the desire to get to that level, to that, you know, tier 1 is only going to have money in small prizes or whatever, and then tier 2 is
Sure.
mainly your awards only section, and then tier 3 is the for funds, you know, or whatever you want to call it.
yeah,
And if you gear it that way, you're like, hey, you don't want to do arm wrestling for fun anymore, and you want to get an award, make it a tier 2. And if you want to
Yeah.
get some money now eventually and stop getting awards or whatever, you got to get into tier 1.
yeah, for sure.
It's a progression thing.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I'm liking it. I'm excited about it. I think you know we'll get through one tournament, a couple tournaments with it. And I think people will understand and a lot better and see the benefit in it.
Yeah.
And that it's not all this crazy like, oh, we got to quit pulling tournaments now and blah blah blah. It's like, no, your tournament pulling is exactly the same as it was before.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep.
Oh.
Really doesn't change nothing.
It doesn't change much. I mean, it'll change the way how the bracket falls for these people, but like,
Yeah, they'll just be like, oh, thank God I don't have to pull that guy first round.
yeah. Well, I think they were drawing conclusions about them not understanding the whole deal, so they thought they were going to be relegated to that particular tier, and they weren't going to be able to pull, X, Y, and Z or whatever. But none of that stuff changes. You want to, like you said, you want to pull. If you're a brand new guy, want to pull the tier 1 class, beat your heart out.
Yeah, that's the thing. You wanna pull up, go ahead, pull up. Doesn't stop anything.
Yeah.
You end up ruining some guy's day. It turns into the Tim Lewis effect. So.
Right.
But.
Yeah, but no, that's about it. I just wanted to kind of get on here, give a little. I mean, it wasn't much of an explanation because it is pretty simple.
Yeah,
it's a pretty simple concept. So, hopefully, my people here in Texas watch this or ask questions. That's one thing too. Is if you guys have any kind of questions or misunderstandings or anything like that, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to Corey. You can reach out to Frank. And we'll explain it, and it's not that big of a deal. It is a big deal for, like I said, I think this is a perfect model for something like Texas Arm Wrestling League because as a league, we're trying, like it's always been my thing, is to have a healthy landscape for everybody, and this provides something for the new guy now coming in. Like he doesn't have to get into his first tournament now and get blasted by an upper level amateur, or anything like that. He can actually, hopefully, classes, sometimes they just don't play out. Like somebody asked, well, what if there's nobody in the novice class? There's nothing I can do about that. All I can do is provide it.
Exactly.
If you want to pull that day, then you have to pull what is available. If there's a novice class available.
Well,
and then there was
the best part that I like about this that you haven't really said, but we've kind of said, is it can be fluid. If you're one of those guys on the edge that's like high end amateur to low end pro, and you know that this tournament you're going to do well at, and then you're able to pull pro now, and you pull pro and you lose, then you go back down. Like you can be that guy who keeps jumping back and forth. And that's where you're supposed to be until you do cross over to the next part. And it allows you to progress.
Yeah, we did touch on that. And I think that's a good option because now it takes the weight off the promoter in a sense for me looking at a guy and going, all right, now you have to stay here or now you have to stay here. You're an open class puller only. Because to me, it was always we were kind of spitballing, like there were some guys that we didn't allow to pull amateurs anymore because our amateur class was at the time they were spanking all of them. Like but they were getting they would pull up sometimes and they might get beat in the open class. So, we had to draw a line somewhere. But, one thing that I have seen that has happened in Texas is that our amateur class is getting pretty good. Like our amateurs are getting pretty good on that in an amateur sense. So it's been a lot better that way. But the way this ELO breaks down is it'll be even better because, like you said, you will get that guy that is on the bubble on both sides. You'll get the novice that, if he's not doing well, and he's got that 1380 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he starts doing well, he'll bump into the tier 2 section and, go from there. But, so you got a question here. Do amateurs and open pullers both gain ELO with this change? It doesn't change anything. Everybody gains ELO or loses ELO.
Yeah, no, there's no difference there. The only thing that will dramatically change quickly is that, like I said, in the beginning, right now, when you're novice or amateur, those come in as a degraded value, essentially. But now with the tier system, we just mark it all open. It's just open whatever. And so everyone will gain and lose at the same rate and everything else, which eventually makes it more accurate, quicker, essentially.
Sure.
So
that's what I was telling Frank too. I think this in tournaments gets the ELOs more accurate quicker.
Yeah, that's the key. We want to make sure that you are the correct value faster.
Yeah.
And then the what ifs go away really quickly.
Yep. Good question there. I think that's Nathaniel maybe. But yeah, really cool stuff. I'm excited about it. So I think everybody's going to love it, to tell you the truth.
No, I think so. Yeah.
But like I was saying before, if there are any questions, concerns, anything like that, don't jump off a ledge thinking that any of these things are going to – I mean, some of these guys – oh, it's Cody. Some of these guys are making up some crazy stuff, and they're already like throwing their hat in like, oh, we're not pulling TAL tournaments anymore. Like there's no justification for those statements like that with what we're doing.
Yeah.
So if you have a question, ask, reach out. Like don't make some of these assumptions that are incorrect and then basically make decisions moving forward when you don't really know all the information yet. Just reach out to somebody.
Yeah. And the good thing is like with the whole ranking super mesh thing, the more you guys start doing that, like the Utah people, the faster again you'll get to where it belongs.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. But I was getting ready to say something. I think this was kind of considering you had been doing this for like 3 years already. I think unfortunately, a lot of people didn't know what was going on in Colorado. Like a lot of people don't know what's going on in California or anything like that as far as tournaments go. To know that you've been running it for 3 years already, and the guys that are consistently going to your tournaments are liking it better and stuff like that. I mean, it was part of the reason why I was like, I had already known you were running it like that. So it was very easy for me to go like, hey, let's just dive into this.
Yeah, no. And like I said, the biggest change was the very first one we did. That was really rough. And people were like, I don't even know what the AERS is and blah, blah, blah. But like I said, I'm working on that system that'll make that a lot easier for you. But people are going to see. They're going to see real quickly, like, oh, that guy's in the tier 2 now. And it's like, yeah, because he's as good as you are. And then they're going to find out, well, oh, yeah, well, he didn't even end up winning. And he was the number 1 seed or whatever it is,
Sure.
It's going to have that kind of weird effect.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, I think that's a really cool aspect, and I hope that people embrace it. But like with guys that have slightly inflated ELOs and stuff like that, they're going to find themselves higher in the bracket, and it's going to level out their ELO really quick.
Yes.
If they're not that high, they're going to get some losses, and then they're going to end up middle of the pack or something like that the next event.
Exactly. Yep.
Yep. I love it. But yeah, we ain't got nothing else, man. I think we're about 2 hours in already. So hopefully people got their questions and concerns addressed, and we can move forward with this. But I think it's going to be really cool. We're going to roll it out at the Eastern August 9th and see what happens.
Sweet.
So
hopefully I get everything ready to go for you by then.
I'm sure it'll be fine. We'll work it out.
Yeah.
But all right, Corey, appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming on and helping and giving some insight, and appreciate all you and Frank do for AERS and all the hard work you guys put in. It's really, I'm like I told you, I'm fully in.
Yeah, we thank everybody for helping out, and I mean I'm about to put in the Michigan State stuff, and I'm pretty sure one of those matches is going to be the 200,000th match in the system.
Nice.
And whoever that is, whoever wins that match is going to get something from us.
Nice.
Probably a shirt or something. I don't know, but
yeah,
I thought it'd be cool to give them something.
Absolutely. Yeah, super cool.
I mean, 200,000 matches is no joke.
No, it's a lot. So I know one thing that I know you guys kind of bump heads, but like Simon had alluded to, and like maybe some guys that don't compete have high ELOs and stuff like that. And I kind of made a comment, which I think you guys are. I mean, you guys are looking at like attrition and stuff like that over time, right?
As far, what do you mean? What'd you say?
Like losing points over time if you're not active. Like you might have a guy that has a super high ELO based on matches from the last 10 years, but he hasn't competed in like 5 years.
So right now, the way it works is the classes page only shows 2 years. So if you have not competed in a weight class in 2 years, you fall off the classes page.
Gotcha.
That's the most other than going to a year, that's the most current, accurate way of saying who's the most current active best pullers.
Gotcha.
Or whatever. And then the thing that he was bringing up, like, oh, well, I'm having pulls for 5 years, whatever, that would never apply in this circumstance. And then for him to not be as rated as high as he is, or wants to be, I should say, is because he doesn't pull enough. And yes, there is some level of activity, because unfortunately about the sport of arm wrestling is you actually have to go arm wrestle to get actual points. You can't just assume you are something you are not.
Yeah.
And that is proven by him going to nationals and losing to Isaiah Jones and getting beat by Jeff Hale as well. So if you only ever compete at one tournament every single year and you lose to those people every single time, then yes, you will finally level out eventually.
Yeah.
But all it's going to take is you go compete at 176 somewhere else a couple more times at any other event.
Yeah.
And you will end up where you're supposed to be. It's probably not where you think you're going to be, but it is.
Well, it's like I said at the beginning of this, like he comes out saying this is only a rating, not a ranking, but then all of his complaints and justifications are really ranking justifications. Like when he comes out and he says, well, my ELO isn't as good as it should be, but I can beat the 50 guys ahead of me. Well, that's a ranking.
Yeah, that's more of a ranking mentality.
Yeah.
And like I've told everyone from day one, like AERS works for a ranking-ish, but it's not meant as a ranking. It's your comparison to everyone else as a relative competition. So
yes,
I'm trying to figure out how well you are as an arm wrestler to the nation.
Sure.
And yeah, you might be able to beat the other 10 guys above you, but do you beat them every single time, or do you beat them only one time, or do you beat this one but you don't beat that one, and so on and so forth?
Right. Yeah.
That's not what matters here. It's about
Yeah.
consistency. It's about beating everybody, and it's about going out and actually arm wrestling.
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
Like Tim Lewis almost has more matches than I do now, and but doesn't mean he wins all the time, and he's not as high as me. He competes
Yeah.
more than anyone, and he's not as high as he should be.
Right.
You would think by now he'd be at 2,000. He's nowhere near that because he loses.
Yeah, but I mean, the guy pulls.
Yeah, he pulls all the time.
Yeah.
But
Like
his win rate's like a 85 or something %, so he's still losing matches he shouldn't lose, and that's affecting his score.
Absolutely. But, all right, Corey.
All right, man.
We can call it quits, but thanks for coming on, like I said, and we'll holler at you later.
All right, bud.
Later.
See ya.
Thanks, everybody.